Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Pajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Pajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jai Mr. Bad Paramahansa Padavidikacharya Ashtotar Tata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Padavidikacharya Ashtotar Tata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindi Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj srimadbhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna. My name is Dravida. I have a request from you. If you can move over one seat. I wouldn't ask you to move any more than you need to move. But there you go. That's better. Yes. Okay. So we don't have a verse written on the board today, but we'll do it word by word, so everyone will get to chant the verse at least that way, like we do with Pushpanjali. Some of you may be familiar with Pushpanjali. Okay. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriet. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtapayesha Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 27th day of October, 2019, in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimadbhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We're in Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order, Chapter 20, Lord Vishnu's appearance in the sacrificial arena of Maharaj Prithu, text number 11. Udasinam Ivadyakshyam Dravya Jnana Kriyatmanam Kutastam Imamatmanam Yo Vedapnoti Shobhanam. All right, I'll chant once myself. Udasinam Ivadyaksham Dravya Jnana Kriyatmanam Kutastam Imamatmanam Yo Vedapnoti Shobhanam. Translation. Anyone who knows, this is Vishnu speaking to Maharaj Prithu. Maharaj Prithu is a great incarnation of the Lord. He's a Shakti means that he's an empowered incarnation. He's not a Vishnu, but he's extremely empowered. Anyone who knows that this material body, made of the five gross elements, the sense organs, the working senses, and the mind, is simply supervised by the fixed soul, is eligible to be liberated from material bondage. Purport. This verse describes how one can become liberated from material bondage. The first point is that one must know that the soul is different from his body. The soul is called Dehi, or one who possesses the body. And the material body is called Deha, or the embodiment of the soul. The body is changing at every moment, but the soul is fixed. Therefore, the soul is called Kutastam. The change of body is enacted by the reactions of the three modes of nature. One who has understood the fixed position of the soul should not be disturbed by the incoming and outgoing interactions of the modes of material nature in the form of happiness and distress. In the Bhagavad Gita also, Lord Krishna recommends that since happiness and distress come and go due to the interaction of the modes of nature on the body, one should not be disturbed by such external movements. Even though one is sometimes absorbed in such external movements, one has to learn to tolerate them. The living entity should be always indifferent to the action and reaction of the external body. Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that the body, made of gross physical elements, earth, water, fire, air, and sky, and the subtle elements, mind, intelligence, and ego, is completely different from the soul proper. One should therefore not be disturbed by the action and reaction of the 8 gross and subtle material elements. The practical process to attain this stage of indifference is to execute devotional service. Only one who constantly engages in devotional service 24 hours a day can be indifferent to the action and reaction of the external body. When a man is absorbed in a particular thought, he does not hear or see any external activities, even though they are enacted in his presence. Similarly, those who are fully absorbed in devotional service do not care what is going on with the external body. That status is called samadhi. One who is actually situated in samadhi is understood to be a first-class yogi. Om jnana timarandasya jnanandana shalakya chakshu unmilitam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. So this verse kind of takes us back to basics, which is the first lesson that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita. In the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, the great fighter on the side of the Pandavas, just when the battle is about to take place, good versus evil, Arjuna certainly on the side of good, and Krishna is on his chariot, everything is all set, and he asks Krishna, who's amazingly taken the role of a charioteer, a servant of Arjuna, to take the chariot into the no man's land, no man's land between two armies. And there he sees on the other side his worshipful grandfather, Bhishma Dev, and his worshipful teacher, Dronacharya, and all kinds of relatives, friends and brothers-in-law, and all kinds of people who he feels tremendously close to. Even the sons of Dhritarashtra, who exiled the Pandavas, who tried to kill them, he still has feelings for them because they're his relatives. And so he freezes up. He says, how can I fight with them? How can I shoot arrows at Bhishma Dev, even if he shoots arrows at me? He's such a glorious and a protector when we were children. And so this is his dilemma. And he has all these arguments from the Vedas, really, about how if I fight this battle, then we'll become killed, then the women will be unprotected, and there will be unwanted children born, I'll be destroyer of the whole civilization, and I don't want it. Who cares? I don't care about this kingdom at all. I'm going off to the forest. But he doesn't go anywhere. He doesn't actually leave the chariot because there's Krishna, and he knows Krishna wants him to fight. So he's caught between this dilemma, and in this confusion and kind of paralysis, he drops his bow, and he's crying, he's shivering. So this is the first chapter. It sets the scene. And really what Arjuna is doing, he represents us. Arjuna is Krishna covers him with Yogamaya. And so he takes the role of someone who's on the bodily concept of life. All of these relationships are related to his body as Arjuna. But Krishna is there to lift him up and lift all of us up out of this bodily concept. So after the first chapter is over and Arjuna says, Govinda, I shall not fight, then Krishna begins his instruction. Arjuna has changed the relationship because they're friends. He says, I'm not speaking as a friend anymore. I'm asking you as a disciple to a guru, the greatest guru that can ever be. Please tell me what is my real dharma, and how can I act for my ultimate good and for the good of everyone else? This is his basic question, and he's not going to argue anymore. He's going to simply receive and ask questions. So in that situation, Krishna starts speaking, and the first thing he says, Ashochanam ashocastram pragyabharangstabhashase, is that you're lamenting for what is not worthy of grief, namely the physical body, that you're going to be responsible for ending the physical body, for death of so many men on the other side and your own side. But and you're speaking learned words like a pandit, because he's quoting from the Vedas. He backed it up with certain instructions about karma and so forth. But those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. And then he says, there was never a time when I didn't exist, nor you. There were all these soldiers. We've always existed as spirit souls. That's the implication we'll explain in the next verse. And we exist now and will exist in the future. In other words, nobody dies and nobody is born. That's the first understanding. And then he speaks a verse that many devotees make their first verse that they memorize. It's all about reincarnation. And not even reincarnation from one body to another, but within this body. Dehi nosmin yata dehe kaumadam yovanam jadatata dehandra praptir dhiras tatra namuyate. Just as, and we can easily all perform this kind of thought experiment, we can take ourselves back to when we were little children. The earliest thing we can remember, usually around 5, 6, something like that, maybe earlier, but around that time. And you can remember a few things, right? And then you go forward and, yes, I entered school and this and that, and then I grew up, I'm 10 years old, and there's a whole series of remembrances there. So according to those remembrances, you're remembering yourself in a different body. Your 5-year-old body, 10-year-old body, 15-year-old body, right? You're adolescent, so there's a whole different thing going on. But you're the same person, the body is changing. Not only your gross body, the body we see in the mirror, but your subtle body, your mind is changing. You're learning so many things, you're giving up childish things, taking on more mature things like that. So the gross body is changing, the subtle body is changing, but you're the same person. Who is that person? What is that thing that doesn't change? That's the soul. That's the spirit soul. That's the Dehi, the occupier of the Deha, the body. That's the first thing. So just as the spirit soul travels through childhood, boyhood, youth, adolescence, middle age, old age, similarly the soul gets another body at the time of death. The sober person, he's referring to Arjuna, he says, is not bewildered by such a... You've been bewildered by the prospect of people changing body, of you forcing people to change bodies. But you should know that really those who are sober-minded, who are dhira, who are intelligent, they don't get, as we would say, freaked out by this, because they know that there's no such thing as death. The soul gets another body at death. There's no death for the soul, and this is the basic principle there. Now, even though that's the case, Arjuna, it's natural that we become disturbed when our dear father dies, or mother, or heaven forbid, our children. In other words, those who we are close to and we've established a bond of love, when they're taken from us, there's naturally an emptiness, there's lamentation. That's understood, that there's a feeling. But one has to tolerate. That's the next verse. Matra sparsha, Prabhupada refers it to here. Matra sparshasta konteya shitoshna sukha dukkha da agama payano niras tamsta tikshasva bharata. That the contact of the senses with their sense objects produces pleasurable and painful sensations. We all experience that. Matra sparsha means it's literally touching the object of the senses with your senses. Shita ushna sukha dukkha da gives cold, heat, pleasure, and pain. But these sensations, these experiences come and they go. We've all experienced that also. So one has to tolerate. If one allows one's mind to become too involved in these transient sensations, then one cannot be liberated. That's the next verse, which is also a reference here. Yami navadiyante te purusham purushashaba samadukha sukham dhiram somitattvaya kalpade. He mentioned that word dhira in the first verse, dehinosmin verse. That one who is dhira, who is sober-minded, who is fixed in understanding of the absolute, then it doesn't allow these things to disturb the mind. You have to tolerate. That's the only solution. And then one can rise up to this platform of, Prabhupada calls it indifference, or we might call vairagya. Vairagya means detachment. Now it's interesting that he says sukha dukkha, that one has to also tolerate the happiness. In other words, the allurements for pleasure of the senses, they have to be tolerated without engaging. The more that you're going for the pleasure of the senses, the more that you're going to feel the pain when that's taken away from you. It's a duality, you see. So this is the first installment of spiritual life. Understanding absolutely that I'm spirit, not matter. I'm not going to die. I was never born. I simply entered into this body for a short term, and then I'll leave it at one point and it'll be finished, and I'll go to another body. Now the question is, and this is the question for all human beings, how can we get the best next body? This is called the Shreya. When Arjuna asks, what is Shreya? Or sometimes Nikshreya, the ultimate good. What is the ultimate good we can work for and achieve in this body? We have a certain amount of time left. So we have to apply our intelligence. First learn the science, and then apply it. And then we can move along the path, the bhakti marga. What's at the end of the path? At the end of the path is not coming back. Liberation from this body and not coming back. Now that's a very kind of technical, dry way of describing it, but that's a preliminary understanding. Our basic problem in this world is it's a miserable world. There's pain everywhere. You know, we try to acquire a little space of happiness and peace, you know, but it's always threatened. Who thought, you know, that I'm living in San Francisco, or I'm living up there, and now I'm not going to have electricity? There's these fires burning? What's going on? My whole life is disrupted. And last year they had these horrible fires, people died. Everyone remembers it, right? So we're thankful, we're in SanDiego, and they're not going to turn the electricity off, but we're also vulnerable. It comes to everybody eventually. So this is material life. Krishna, he certifies it. Dukkha aliyam ashashratam. It is an abode, aliyam, of dukkha, of misery, with little points of relief, we call happiness. But the basic principle is that everybody, you have two choices. You get old and sick and die, or you die prematurely from some accident or something. Great. It's the electric chair or the hanging. Take your pick. In other words, that's the nature of this world. Because we chose, we can't blame anyone else or anything else. We chose to turn our back on Krishna and try to exploit this material world. You know, we never dreamed it would become like this. We thought we'd be demigods and just simply control and enjoy. But it doesn't work like that. This is unnatural, and Krishna wants us to come back. This idea of tough love, you know, when an adolescent boy is growing up, he's impossible to control. They got into drugs or something, got him out of the drugs. The parents sometimes say, okay, we're going to send them to some place where there'll be strong discipline, you know, tough love. They do it out of love, not out of enmity. Hopefully, the kid will get it straight, you know, and become serious. Military school, something like that. So that's the idea that that's what this place is. It's a reformatory. It's not it's a prison, but it's not a prison where, you know, it's just for torturing us. It's meant to teach us. We cannot be happy here. We can't be happy in this material world at all, ultimately. We need to find that ultimate source of happiness, which nobody knows about. But it's there in the spiritual world. Krishna is described as Anandamaya Bhyasat in the Vedanta Sutra. Anandamaya simply means full of bliss all the time. You know, why would God, who's all powerful, ever not be happy? You know. Now, if you read, you know, some of the Leela, it looks like, in separation from Radharani, you know, he's also lamenting. There's passages like that, but that's a whole other thing. That's transcendental bliss at a whole other level. Basically, Krishna is Anandamaya, full of bliss, and we're also part and parcel of him, so we're also full of bliss in our natural state. Now we're trying to access that nature of bliss within the material world. It doesn't work like that. Matter is constantly changing. What's pleasing one moment, the same thing can be displeasing the next moment. A simple example, cold water. You know, in the hot summer sun, you dive into the pool and say, oh, what a relief. In the cold winter, the last thing you want is to fall into a pool, you know, break the ice and go in it. The same water, right? The same pool is once as pleasurable and painful. You know, we've all had experience. You know, at least I have had a lot of experience. There's some tasty prasadam. Oh, this kapta and these pakoras are incredible. You know, take 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. You know, oh, why did I do that? Next morning I can't eat anything. You know, so there's something that's full of pleasure, but then it causes pain. Everything has to be just right for you to enjoy material pleasure. But that just right, that's not the material world. It's always changing. Your body's changing, you're changing. The thing. So how to get out of this ever-changing world? That's the process of devotional service. And here, the idea is that, first of all, anyone who knows this material body made of 5 gross elements, the sense organs, the working senses of the mind, let's just run through those. This is like elementary Sankhya. Sankhya means to analyze or count. And there's parts of the Bhagavatam, this is a little section of it, but some that are more extensive, that analyze what is this situation? What are we in? So we have these, first is the body, and we interact with our environment through the senses, obviously, right? So there's two categories of senses in the Vedic understanding. There's what we call the senses, which are called Gyanendriya, knowledge-acquiring senses, the eyes, the ears, the taste, the nose, the smelling, and the touch. Okay, those 5. But then there's also these 5 active senses, how we react, just like the voice. For the devotee, the most important active sense is the voice. Prabhupada ran this whole movement by just speaking. Okay, typing something, but that's basically the same thing. And then there's the hands and the legs. What would we do without those? This is how we live in this world, right? And then there's the procreative organ, the excretive organ. Those are 5. So there's 10 senses. And this is our situation. We live in a body composed of these senses. Okay. And then we have the subtle aspect, the mind, the intelligence, and the ego, which is really controlling all these. The mind is said to be the 6th sense because It directs the eyes to go here and look at that, the ears to look here. Taste that, don't taste that, right? The mind is doing that. And the intelligence department is discriminating. The mind is not, it simply says, oh, this is good, this is bad. But the intelligence department is, oh, how can I maximize the pleasure and minimize the pain? Especially in human beings, that intelligence is highly developed. So all of these things are all inanimate. And we're animating them by being in the body. As soon as we leave the body as a soul, then the body just degenerates into dust, whatever it is. So that presence of the soul in the body, we are within this environment, and this is how we are interacting with the world, and this is how we identify ourselves. So the first task of a transcendentalist is to not identify with this covering, but rather identify with the soul, and use the senses, both the active and the knowledge acquiring, to deepen that understanding of our relationship with the Supreme Soul, Krishna, and in this way to spiritualize the body. The body doesn't have to be the anchor and the kind of the ball and chain that it is right now on material consciousness. The human body especially can be a great agent for serving Krishna. Just like think of the body as just a very complicated and amazingly useful machine. So we use machines all the time in Krishna's service. We have cars, and not only machines, but all of this matter that you have, like makes up a temple, or the deity, or when we make prasadam. These are the same ingredients that they're using in any restaurant. But because the purpose has changed, we're making this for Krishna. We're making this so that Krishna will have it and give the prasadam, and we'll have it for the Sunday feast, and people will taste prasadam. The motive, everything is the motive, is different. And therefore the effect on our consciousness is different. So the whole science of bhakti is, which has been exhaustively formulated by Rupa Goswami and the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and which they practiced and showed by example how to live, is exactly this: to use our senses, primarily the ear, but all the other senses also, the ear and the voice I mentioned, for transcendentalizing our whole existence. So that, as Prabhupada mentions here, someone can be living in the body, you don't disappear, but you're not identifying with it, and therefore you're absorbed in Krishna, and you're not disturbed by what's going on. You're not allured by the allurements of the material pleasure, and you're not completely, disturbed by pains that come. This is explained nicely by Lord Kapila Dev. In his, there's a series of 8 verses at the beginning of his teachings to his mother, in 3rd canto, 25th chapter, beginning text 20, which has to do with Sangha. The whole thing revolves around Sangha, what our consciousness is going to be like. Sangha means basically associating with others, human beings, but it also means associating with anything. What music we listen to, what books we read, where we go. Like you all chose to come to the temple here. That means your consciousness in this is a certain place, and you want to cultivate a certain consciousness. I always give the example, like 100 feet down the road, you got this pizza bar. You could go there, just by a few different steps, and you'd have a whole different consciousness. There's all the people who want to go to the pizza bar that walk by the Hare Krishnas. They wouldn't go in there, if you paid them. And we wouldn't go in the pizza bar if you paid us. A different mentality. But you can see, you develop and deepen your consciousness by where you go to and who you associate with. So, in his Sadhu Sangashtaka, I kind of named it, I hope I didn't make an offense, but it's all about the importance of associating with devotees. So he has this verse at the beginning, he says, Prasangam madanam pasham atmanakavayo vidu saesha sadhashukrito moksha dwaram apavatam. Now moksha means liberation from this body. Devotees aren't ultimately concerned with that, but it's a very good preliminary motive. In other words, we want to break free of the bonds of this material body and attain our spiritual body and go back to Godhead. Prabhupada made this frame. Go back home, back to Godhead. This is our home. This is not our home. Eventually we were evicted from there. So he says, prasanga bhajanam pasham. Prasanga means very strong attachment in this context. Ajanam pasham, just like strong ropes, all of our attachments to this world in ordinary consciousness. Atmana, of the soul. Kavayo vidu, those who are wise, of course Krishna himself and those who follow, they know very well that those very same attachments, strong attachments, have to be taken from the things of this world and the living beings of this world and transferred to the sadhus, the pure devotees. In other words, it's this, we have freedom in the human form because we have the intelligence to reform ourselves. Yes, it means austerity because we're habituated to a certain kind of thinking and acting. But when the intelligence is purified and we have faith because of association, then we can move into the next step. As soon as we chant Hare Krishna, we are choosing to associate with Krishna himself, because Krishna is his name. He's present in his name, and that's the first step, especially in this age, to chant Hare Krishna. But then there's also the effort, the sadhana, of placing the mind on Krishna, hearing that name. We know how the mind may want to bring it back, hear the name, and that's the highest kind of sangha. So here he's saying that, and I put it into a little poem, mundane attachment keeps us bound to birth and death infernal, but love for sadhus opens wide the doors to life eternal. What do you think? So then the question is, well, who is that sadhu? So he gives 3 verses describing the sadhus. And the first one is exactly what this verse is about, toleration. Tatikshava, karunika, suridak sarvadehinam, ajata shattavak shandha, sadhavak sadhubhushana. These are the ornaments of a sadhu, means the character qualities. First is tolerance, tatikshava, and very merciful. This means that the real sadhu makes the effort to teach others, which can often be a difficult task. Look at all the austerities that Prabhupada went through. He had to tolerate so much to come to America, that trip, practically died on the trip. And then when he came here, all these hippies and, the Bowery. And, I lived in New York. The Bowery is where we have these homeless here now. In those days, in the 60s, if you got homeless, if somehow you went to New York and you went to the Bowery. So that's where all, it's just like we have sometimes, we're on the street here, you go to LA, well, there's a camp on the street. That was the Bowery. People would sit on the porch and drink wine, they gave up, they threw in a towel, They lost all their money, whatever. So Prabhupada's living amongst them. He had to walk over to get up to his apartment that he was sharing with the guy who eventually freaked out on LSD. Prabhupada had to run out of the apartment, the guy was threatening him. Yeah, read the Prabhupada Lilamrita, it's amazing what Prabhupada went through. But he didn't leave. He would sometimes go down to the port, to the wharf there, look and find out what the trips were back to India. But he never got on that boat. He stayed, tolerating us. So, tolerant and merciful. Suridak sarvadehinam, the friend of all living beings. How many times did Prabhupada say, to his personal soul, take the little insect, put him out, not even what to speak of cows, human beings. No harm to anyone, completely this friend of all. Ajatasha, having no enmity or enemies, and peaceful. Therefore peaceful. If you don't want anything for yourself, and you're simply giving, you're not. You can actually be calm and peaceful. It's when we have these unmet desires and all these attachments and things, So how does that happen? Maya ananyeva bhaktena bhaktim kurvanti ye dridham. Undeviating devotional service to me, says Kapila Dev, who's an incarnation of Krishna. And then, how does that manifest? Matkrute chakta karmanas. Such devotees, they'll give up any activity which is impediment to the devotional service. This can sometimes be pretty painful. They're so attached to doing something, we know that's not good anymore. I can't drink anymore. Or something, whatever. Hare Krishna. So, and even if their personal relationships are impediments, if they are, they'll give those up. That can be very austere. So what's the benefit? So then he says, the third verse, he says, what do they experience? They're always chanting and hearing and glorifying, by speaking very sweet vibrations about me. Songs about Krishna, so much we have from the Bhagavatam. These are they become more and more sweet and pleasurable when you become a devotee and you become, purified. It becomes just like nectar, drinking nectar. Lord Chaitanya, they wouldn't stop. They would go on all night, just hearing about Krishna in complete ecstasy. Marashya katam rishta. And what's the result? And this brings up the point of being able to tolerate this. Because their minds are on me, they don't feel the pains and pleasures of this world like ordinary people. They're completely absorbed. Prabhupada gave the example of the last person in the world you would think. He would give an example of the transcendentalist, Stalin, the Russian dictator in the war. Prabhupada tells the story, and he had to have an operation one time in his stomach, But really, he was completely afraid of being assassinated while he was under anesthesia. So he said, "Oh, you don't have to give me any anesthesia." And he had developed his mind with such a powerful will that they could cut him open and he could tolerate the pain. That's what Prabhupada gave the example. But the devotee tolerates the pain because he's absorbed in Krishna, and Krishna minimizes it. So anyway, the Sadhu Sangashta goes on, but I just wanted to take it to that point because this is all about tolerance, becoming indifferent to the external body. That can happen when your subtle body is always connected to Krishna, when you're absorbed in serving Krishna. That's the samadhi that he's talking about. Those who are fully absorbed in devotional service do not care what is going on with the external body. The status is called samadhi. Now, this is all kind of in a way of tolerance, but the positive side is what attracts the devotee, and that is the pleasure that comes, the transcendental pleasure, because the bhakti doesn't give up or try to negate the understanding, the truth that we as spirit souls are pleasure-seeking beings. Because Krishna is the unlimited and the original enjoyer. He's the supreme enjoyer. I meant anandamaya abhyasa. Ananda is different from sense pleasure. Sense pleasure is very flickering and limited. But ananda is not flickering. When you experience ananda, it can go on and on and on, ultimately eternally. Ever increasing. We can't even imagine what that kind of pleasure is. Anandam buddhivardhanam, says Lord Chaitanya. About this chanting of Hare Krishna that we'll have tonight, more of, in congregational chanting you will experience. So when one is really purified and is hearing that name and experiencing Krishna's presence in the name, he feels like the ocean of bliss in his heart is just expanding beyond its bounds. Anandam buddhivardhanam. We should have faith in that and strive for that. Beyond liberation is this experience of unending happiness of bhakti. And we get little tastes of it. Otherwise we wouldn't, come back again and again. Krishna is so merciful, Lord Chaitanya is so merciful. But to strive for experiencing it all the time, then you're liberated even in this body, and certainly at the time of death you go back to Krishna in the spiritual world. So that's the ultimate goal. And this Bhagavatam often gives us, as it does here, kind of basic instructions, but it always brings us to the ultimate state. And of course it brings us to the 10th canto, which is the summum bonum, and it describes Krishna's Leela. And the relationships that all of the bhaktas and devotees have with him. I was just reviewing, there's this beautiful passage in the 35th chapter of the 10th canto. The highest devotees are the gopis. The gopis are the greatest devotees of Krishna. Lord Chaitanya certified. And why is that? Because their love for him is most intense and pure. Now what does that mean? If we really want to understand what the position of the gopis are, you read the 4th chapter of the Adi Leela of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is a very important chapter. And he gives the distinction very carefully between love and lust. Love and lust. Lust is a powerful, powerful desire for me to enjoy. Ultimately, I'm the enjoyer. It's actually our enemy. Kama esha, krodha esha, rajoguna samudana, the mahasana, vidyanamaya vaidanam. Arjuna wanted to know, what do we, sometimes it may take him out if it becomes too disturbing. Okay. Yeah. Look at that. He's waving the Krishna. He's a very beautiful boy, but a couple of years he'll be. Where was I? Oh yes, lust and love. So what does Arjuna ask at the end of chapter 3? This is the chapter about karma yoga, about doing things for Krishna. And he says, sometimes, speaking for us, we're practically forced to do things. We seem like we're forced to do things that we know are bad. Well, as soon as we do, we say, why did I do that? Again, right? So Krishna answered this very important question. Kama esha, krodha esha, rajoguna samudvaha, mahashano mahapapma, vindhenam avaidinam. Interesting, he uses this word enemy because they're in the middle of a battlefield. So what he's saying is, this is your real enemy, not those soldiers on the other side. This is your enemy, the internal enemy. It is powerful material desire headed by sex desire, but not only. And then the frustration of that produces anger. We know from our own experience, or certainly from history, that someone will do something in anger that you say, oh, what did I do that for? I just killed my brother. That happens sometimes. You do something and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. So lust and anger, the modes of passion and ignorance, cover our knowledge. This is what he says. This karma covers our original knowledge of who we are. Right? We know we're not the body, but we completely identify with the body. So, but Krishna's Leela seem to be sometimes, if you don't understand, displays of that. He's calling the gopis in the middle of the night with his flute, and they come, they run out, right? They can't help themselves. They don't even dress properly, running out to be with Krishna. It looks like some scene from a modern movie or something. But it's not. And the difference between kama and prema, let me see if I got this, I keep trying to memorize this. Atmendriya piti vancha tare bali kam. Krishnendriya piti icha dare prem nam. So he compares kama and prema to two metals. Kama is iron and prema is gold. They look similar in the sense they're both metals and they're both hard, but we know there's a world of difference, right? So he says, Atmendriya Pratibhansha, the desire to please one's own senses is kama. The same ardent desire as shown by the gopis to please Krishna's senses is prema. So what looks like the display of lust is actually this highest display of love, meaning concern for the other's pleasure. Krishna wants us to come out by the flute. Okay, we're going, and they have this, unbreakable desire. Their parents and husbands can't even stop them, except if they can hold on to them, They go out, and there's a whole thing that happens with the rasa dance that I won't get into, but it's a display, though it looks externally like boys and girls playing together, but it's not. It's the highest level of love of God. And so we have been in this material world in the throes of material desire, the modes of passion, modes of ignorance, different species. Lower species can't do anything about it. The intelligence isn't there. But as human beings, we can understand Krishna's instructions here. How do we transform lust back into love? He says kama is simply prema that has been adulterated and distorted by contact with the modes of nature, our selfish desires. So how to purify it and turn it back into prema? That's the art of bhakti. It's not easy, but it's possible if we have determination and we're in the right association and all of this. So the first step is understanding I, myself, am different from this body. This body has been awarded to me because of things I've done in my previous life, and all of us must have very likely had some devotional service in previous life also. The greatest, most fortunate birth is to be born into a family of devotees, where from your very birth, like this little child, how fortunate he is, coming in there, Krishna, he's waving to Krishna. I mean, it all counts. in the devotional service. Very fortunate. But we're also fortunate in that we're sitting here at the feet of Krishna and we're hearing Bhagavad Gita. So what are we going to do about it? We shouldn't think that, these are great exalted examples, we can't possibly achieve anything like that. Prabhupada came and told us, no, you can. Lord Chaitanya is giving the easy process. Become serious about chanting, learn the 10 offenses, read the books, transform your life, associate with devotees, take advice on how to do this, how not to do that. That's what it means. So a very important part of the process is this Bhagavatam class. As I say every morning, quoting from Bhagavatam, Prabhupada gave this translation for Nashta Prayasha Badreshu, those who regularly attend Srimad Bhagavatam class and have their consciousness purified and ultimately come to the stage of goodness, pure goodness, and it's all in the Bhagavatam. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of all the Vedic literatures. We don't have time or inclination or possibility to haul through all the Vedas and the Puranas and everything that exists. But if we just read the Bhagavatam and the books that have been given, Srila Prabhupada gave us, there's a substantial literature there. We'll be enlightened in the science of bhakti and who we are, and we can make some good progress, even go back to God in this lifetime. So that's what Vishnu is teaching Prithu here, and we're able to listen in. Prabhupada's giving this wonderful explanation. First, understand what you actually are, who am I, and then learn how to act on that basis. That's a spirit soul, rather than just the spirit soul bewildered by being in a material body, which we've been doing for so many lifetimes. It's a great chance. This verse Prabhupada would always quote, Labdva sudurlabhamidham bahusambhavante manushyamat tatamanityamapi adhyera. It says, you have attained this rare human form of life, sudurlabhamidham, after many, many births. The understanding is we've been through all these other species. Mercifully we've forgotten, but you can imagine what it's been like. And then we've come up after many, many births to this human form. And it's unique among all the species because it's artadam. Artadam means it can give you the final goal of life. These other bodies can't. As Prahlad said, Nate vidu svarta katimi Vishnum. The svarta. Svarta means swarta, the actual goal of the soul, is Vishnu. People don't know it. And they take external goals. We'll build this up, we'll go here, we'll do this, a million different things, which simply degrade the soul. So we can understand. But like all other forms, it's temporary. We don't have unlimited time in this particular incarnation of human life. So the clock is ticking. Therefore, the next word is turnam, means quickly, don't delay. Don't waste any time. Yateta, strive. Turnam yateta napateta namrityaya. But as long as you hadn't died yet, strive for what? Nikshayasa, the ultimate good. Not all these flickering little pleasures, gross and subtle. That's not the ultimate good. Strive for that ultimate state of pure ananda, Satchit Ananda. Vishayakala sarvataksat, because in all these other forms we've been through, we've experienced every kind of pleasure there could possibly be. And look where it got us, another body to face death. In other words, they don't last. Oh, that's just Maya's trick. Don't be tricked by Maya anymore. That's her service, to try to bewilder us. But if we hang on to Krishna's words and Krishna's service and Krishna's lotus feet, then Maya can't bewilder us, because she's after all his servant also. So she releases, and we can become enlightened and become enlivened in devotional service. And we find that if we make a little effort, Krishna helps us. And we find ourselves doing things that we didn't think we could do, and giving up things we never thought we could give up. So there's a transformation that takes place. So that's our experience, and Srila Prabhupada is bringing us back to the basics here in this purport, but it's always important. Okay, I've gone over time. Any questions, comments? Yes, Prabhu.
Yes,
good morning. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
we always pray a while before we get to the form.
Exactly.
And that's how I was raised. In one of the lectures I went to, telling a couple of things that when you're born as a man or as a human, and then you go up and down.
Well, yeah, I think they were referring to, in the 9th canto, Prabhupada revealed, just before we got to the 10th canto, that when we fall from the spiritual world, the first birth we take is Brahma, which is the highest form in the demigod. He lives for uncounted, trillions of years. But he doesn't always go back to Godhead. The Brahma that is now overseeing this universe is a great devotee. He's been enlightened. He spoke the Brahma Samhita and met Krishna, and so he's going back. He's the head of our sampradaya. From Brahma, he enlightened, Narada Muni, and Narada Muni came to Vyasa. The knowledge, but there's millions of universes and millions of Brahmas, and if Brahma, gets too involved in the creation, then he can also come down. It's not a one-way street. We, as human beings, we can become degraded. Just look at all the billions of people. They're not chanting Hare Krishna, and they're performing all kinds of sinful activity, which are against the rules of the Vedas, and so therefore they're scheduled to lose that human form of life. That's explained in the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Is that you can go down. There's a verse right in the 2nd chapter encouraging devotees, Neha Bhikramanashosti Pratibhayo Navidyate. That is, in this endeavor of bhakti yoga, there's no loss or diminution. Like just coming to this class one time, and all of you have more experience than that. But just doing a little devotional service, he says, suopam. It protects you from the worst danger, the most fearful danger, which is losing the human form of life. Nobody dies, but you can lose this human form of life for hundreds of thousands of years. Back down in the species and dying, coming up, because you're burning off karma. You don't incur any karma down there. This is the life of responsibility. So it's a cycle, of birth and death. And Brahmana Brahmate Kon, Lord Chaitanya says, after one has wandered up and down the planets and the different species, the fortunate soul gets the seed of the creeper of devotion planted in his heart by the mercy of both Krishna and Guru. And that seed is in the form of the holy name and faith, some faith in the practice, so that it keeps you in association. But that seed needs to be planted. So, but once it's planted, we need to cultivate it. And we need to cultivate with hearing and chanting and avoiding offenses and all these things. So that what they're referring to is like coming down. Juda Karma Babu, our great scientist, wrote a book called Human Devolution. He's describing how we come down from the spiritual world and then we become more and more degraded and we go down to the ants. But nobody dies. You're always going on. But it can go on for millions of lifetimes of Brahma. Who wants to waste time? Prabhupada says, don't waste any more time. Just mucking around in the material world. You can't be happy here, and there's all this suffering and pain. Why not get out and at least work toward getting out, and then nothing is lost. So next lifetime you'll be born in like this child here. In a family of devotees, they'll take you to the deities. You have a very good chance. I didn't get a chance to be born. That some of you may have in Indian bodies, But for 25 years, I was in, total illusion. I was just by great fortune. I met the devotees. So that's what they were referring to. So the point is, that's why this verse is Turnam Yateta. Quickly strive. Don't waste any time. You're in the who knows how many hours and minutes or days or years we have left. We think, I'm only 23. I have all this time. Who knows? Who knows how much time we really have? So as knowing the urgency of it, then we should take it very seriously and apply our intelligence to striving for Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Bol.